My name is Garrett, and I am 54 years old. For 28 years, I worked as an electrician, climbing poles in the blazing sun and crawling through tight spaces in the freezing cold, all to provide for my wife Linda and our daughter Emma. I thought I knew what sacrifice meant. I thought I understood loyalty. But when Linda told me she needed to take Emma to care for her sick parents, I believed every word. What I discovered when I showed up unannounced at that house changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about trust betrayal and finding your strength resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to join this community. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I met Linda when I was 26 years old at a small diner on the corner of 5th and Madison. She was working the evening shift, carrying plates with a grace that made the whole room feel warmer. Her smile caught me first. It was not the polished kind you see in magazines. It was real, the kind that reached her eyes and made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I ordered coffee I did not need just to stay a little longer. We talked that night for hours after her shift ended. She told me about her dreams of having a family, a house with a garden, maybe a dog someday. I told her I was an electrician, that I worked with my hands and did not have much, but I knew how to build things. She said that was all she ever wanted. Someone who could build a life with her. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. It was nothing fancy. I took her to the same diner where we met, got down on one knee right there between the counter and the jukebox, and asked her to be my wife. She cried and said yes before I could even finish the question. We got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at her parents' house. Harold and Doris stood on the porch, beaming with pride, as their daughter said her vows. Emma came along 3 years into our marriage. The moment I held her in my arms, everything shifted. This tiny person with Linda's eyes and my stubborn chin became the center of my universe. I remember looking at Linda in that hospital room and making a silent promise. I would give them everything. I would work until my bones ached if it meant they never had to worry about anything. And that is exactly what I did. Linda stayed home to raise Emma while I took on extra jobs. I worked overtime whenever it was available. I took weekend projects that other guys turned down because they wanted time off. But I could not afford time off. We had a mortgage to pay, a daughter to raise, and dreams to fund. I told myself this was what being a man meant. This was what fathers did. There were years when I barely saw Emma awake. I would leave before sunrise and come home after her bedtime. Linda would leave me notes on the kitchen counter, little updates about Emma's day. She took her first steps today. She said her first word, and it was Dada. I kept those notes in my toolbox for years, reading them during lunch breaks on job sites, feeling connected to my family, even when I was miles away. When Emma started school, I promised myself I would be more present. But the bills kept coming. The roof needed repairs. The car broke down twice in 1 year. Linda wanted to renovate the kitchen because she said it made her depressed cooking in such a small space. So I kept working, kept climbing those poles, kept crawling through those spaces, kept telling myself it would all be worth it someday. By the time I was 45, my body started to protest. I threw out my back, lifting a transformer one summer afternoon. The doctor told me I needed to rest for at least 2 weeks. I rested for 3 days before going back to work. We could not afford the lost income, and besides, resting made me feel useless. Linda never asked me to go back early, but she also never told me to stay home. I took her silence as understanding. The truth is, I did not know how to be anything other than a provider. My father worked himself into an early grave at a steel mill, and his father before him did the same in the coal mines. In my family, men did not talk about feelings or take vacations. Men worked. Men provided. Men sacrificed. And so I sacrificed day after day, year after year, believing that my family saw my efforts as love. I paid off the mortgage when I was 50. That night I came home with a bottle of champagne and the deed in my hand, free and clear, no more bank owning our home. I expected celebration. Instead, Linda gave me a tired smile and said that was nice before going back to watching television. Emma, who was 22 at the time and living at home while finishing college, did not even come downstairs. I stood in the kitchen, holding that champagne, realizing I did not know when things had shifted. When did my sacrifices become invisible? When did my presence become something they simply tolerated rather than treasured? I did not have answers, only questions I was too afraid to ask. Looking back, I can see the signs I chose to ignore. Linda and I stopped having real conversations somewhere around our 15th anniversary. Our talks became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? Emma needs money for her field trip. The lawn needs mowing. We moved around each other like polite strangers sharing a house, and I told myself this was normal. Every long marriage goes through quiet phases, right? Emma changed too. As a child, she adored me. She would wait by the window on Friday evenings, watching for my truck to pull into the driveway. The moment I stepped out, she would run to me screaming, "Daddy," and leap into my arms. I do not remember when she stopped waiting. I do not remember when Daddy became Dad, delivered in that dismissive tone teenagers perfect. I just know that by the time she went to college, I felt more like an ATM than a father. I kept sending her money every month. Tuition, rent, groceries, spending money. She rarely called to thank me. When she did call, it was to talk to Linda. I would hear them laughing together in the other room, sharing secrets I was not invited to know. I told myself daughters and mothers have a special bond. I told myself Emma would appreciate me more when she was older, when she understood what it took to provide for a family. I was wrong about so many things. The call came on a Tuesday evening in early September. Linda was in the kitchen when her phone rang, and I heard her voice shift into that concerned tone people use when receiving bad news. When she came into the living room, her face was drawn, and she sat down across from me with a heavy sigh. Her father Harold was having heart problems, she told me. Serious ones. The doctors were running tests, but things did not look good. Her mother Doris was struggling to cope, too overwhelmed to care for Harold on her own. Linda said she needed to go to them to help manage the situation and support her parents through this difficult time. I understood immediately. Of course she had to go. Harold and Doris were good people. They had welcomed me into their family 28 years ago and treated me like a son. I asked Linda when she wanted to leave and started calculating how much time I could take off work to go with her. But Linda shook her head. She said I needed to stay home and work. Someone had to keep earning money, she explained. Besides, she was taking Emma with her. Emma had just graduated from college and was between jobs, so she could help around the house while Linda focused on her parents. 2 women could handle the caregiving. 3 people would be too many in that small house. I wanted to argue, but her logic made sense. Money was not as tight as it used to be, but we were still not wealthy. My income kept us comfortable, and taking weeks off unpaid would strain our finances. Plus, Harold and Doris did live in a modest 2-bedroom home. Adding another person would crowd the space. So I agreed. I helped Linda pack their bags. I loaded the car with groceries and supplies for the trip. I hugged Emma and told her to take care of her mother and grandparents. She barely looked at me, already scrolling through her phone as she climbed into the passenger seat. Linda kissed my cheek quickly and promised to call when they arrived. I stood in the driveway watching them drive away, feeling a strange emptiness settle in my chest. The house behind me was quiet, in a way it had not been in years. No television humming in the background. No footsteps upstairs. No voices carrying through the walls. Just silence and me. The first few days were fine. I kept myself busy with work, taking on extra jobs to fill the hours I used to spend with my family. I called Linda every evening around 7, and she always answered, though our conversations were brief. She sounded tired, distracted. Harold was stable but weak. Doris was anxious and needed constant reassurance. The days were long and exhausting. I told her I understood and to take whatever time she needed. Emma was harder to reach. I called her several times, but she rarely answered. When she did, she seemed annoyed by the interruption. She was helping with meals, she said. She was running errands for Grandma. She did not have time to chat. I accepted her excuses because I did not want to be the kind of father who smothered his adult daughter. By the second week, the loneliness started to gnaw at me. I had lived in this house for over 2 decades, but without Linda and Emma, it felt like a stranger's home. I wandered through rooms I rarely entered, noticing things I had overlooked for years. The family photos on the mantel that were never updated past Emma's high school graduation. The stack of books on Linda's nightstand that had not changed in months. The dust gathering on the treadmill we bought 5 years ago and used twice. One evening, I sat down at the computer in our home office to pay some bills. Linda usually handled the finances, but she had asked me to cover things while she was gone. I logged into our bank account and noticed the balance was lower than expected. We had been spending more than usual lately, though I could not pinpoint where the money was going. I decided to check Linda's email to see if there were any bills I had missed. We shared passwords for everything, or so I thought. Her account was still logged in on the browser, so I clicked through to her inbox without thinking twice. That is when I saw the email. It was from a company called Henderson Realty, dated 3 days earlier. The subject line read, "Property valuation completed." My curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. The email thanked Linda for requesting a property valuation on the residence at 1423 Maple Lane. The attached report estimated the home's current market value at $375,000, well above the original purchase price. The message concluded by asking if she would like to proceed with listing the property. 1423 Maple Lane was Harold and Doris's address. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was reading. Why would Linda be getting a property valuation for her parents' house? Were they planning to sell and move somewhere smaller? It would make sense given Harold's health issues. Maybe they needed to relocate closer to medical facilities. But something did not sit right. Linda had not mentioned anything about her parents selling their home. In all our brief phone conversations, she never once brought up realtors or property values or moving plans. Why would she hide something so significant? I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe Linda was just researching options to present to her parents. Maybe Harold asked her to handle it quietly because he did not want to worry Doris. I closed the email and tried to put it out of my mind. 3 days later, Marcus called. Marcus has been my best friend since we were young men working our first jobs in the electrical union. We have been through everything together. Marriages, divorces for him anyway, births, deaths, promotions, layoffs. He knows me better than anyone, sometimes better than I know myself. He called on a Saturday afternoon, sounding hesitant, in a way that immediately put me on edge. Marcus is not a hesitant person. He says what he means and means what he says. So when he started with, "I do not want to worry you, but I knew something was wrong," he had been at the Westfield shopping center that morning, picking up a gift for his niece's birthday. While walking through the food court, he saw a woman who looked exactly like Linda sitting at a table with a younger woman and a man in a suit. He almost went over to say hello, but something stopped him. The way they were huddled together, speaking in low voices over a stack of papers, it looked like a business meeting, not a family crisis. Marcus said he watched for a few minutes from a distance. The man did most of the talking, gesturing at the papers and occasionally touching Linda's arm in a way that seemed too familiar. Emma sat beside her mother, nodding along and sipping coffee like she did not have a care in the world. He tried to convince himself he was mistaken. Linda was supposed to be 4 hours away caring for her sick parents, but the more he watched, the more certain he became. It was definitely Linda and Emma, having what looked like a casual meeting at a shopping mall when they were supposed to be at Harold and Doris's bedside. Marcus apologized for calling. He said he was probably wrong, that there was surely a logical explanation, that he did not want to cause trouble between me and Linda. But he thought I should know what he saw, just in case. I thanked him and hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible explanation for what Marcus had seen. Maybe Harold had improved enough for Linda and Emma to take a day trip. Maybe they needed to pick up medical supplies only available in the city. Maybe Marcus was simply wrong, and the woman he saw was a stranger who happened to look like my wife. But none of these explanations erased the knot forming in my stomach. Combined with the real estate email, something felt deeply wrong. I could not shake the feeling that my wife and daughter were hiding something significant from me. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to drive to Harold and Doris's house. I would show up unannounced, bring flowers and food, and see for myself what was happening. If everything was fine, I would feel foolish for doubting them, and that would be a relief. If something was wrong, at least I would know the truth. I left early, stopping along the way to buy a bouquet of sunflowers, Linda's favorite, and a basket of homemade cookies from the bakery Doris loved. I also picked up some vitamins and supplements for Harold, hoping they might help with his recovery. The drive took just under 4 hours, and with each mile my anxiety grew. When I turned onto Maple Lane, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The house looked normal from the street. The lawn was mowed. The curtains were open. A car I did not recognize sat in the driveway beside Linda's sedan. I parked on the street about 50 yards away, suddenly uncertain about my plan. What if I was overreacting? What if Linda got angry that I did not trust her enough to stay home? I sat in my truck for several minutes, arguing with myself before deciding to at least walk up and look through the window. If everything seemed normal, I would knock on the door and surprise them with my visit. I approached the house from the side, staying close to the hedges that bordered the property. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard. I could hear voices coming from inside, faint but distinct. Laughter. Multiple people laughing. That stopped me cold. Harold was supposedly fighting heart problems. Doris was supposedly overwhelmed with worry. Why would there be laughter? I crept closer to the living room window, pressing myself against the wall and peering through a gap in the curtains. What I saw made my blood freeze. Harold sat in his favorite armchair, looking perfectly healthy. No oxygen tank. No medication bottles on the table beside him. Just a cup of tea in his hand and a relaxed expression on his face. Doris sat on the sofa nearby, equally at ease, flipping through a magazine. But they were not what held my attention. In the center of the room, gathered around the coffee table, sat Linda, Emma, and a man I had never seen before. He was middle-aged, wearing an expensive suit, with the polished appearance of someone who made his living talking people into things. Papers were spread across the table between them, and everyone was leaning in, studying the documents intently. I strained to hear what they were saying. The man's voice came through the glass first. "The market is hot right now. If we list at $350, we will probably get offers within a week. Cash buyers are very interested in properties like this." Linda nodded enthusiastically. "And the closing can happen quickly. We need this done before Garrett starts asking too many questions." My name hit me like a physical blow. Before Garrett starts asking questions. What did that mean? Emma spoke next, and her words cut even deeper. "I still think we should ask for $375. The appraisal says it is worth that much. Why leave money on the table?" The man shrugged. "We can list high and negotiate down, but remember we need to split everything 3 ways after we handle the legal fees. And your mother mentioned needing funds for the divorce proceedings." Divorce. The word echoed in my skull, blocking out everything else for a moment. Divorce. Linda was planning to divorce me. She was selling her parents' house and using the money to fund a divorce I knew nothing about. I watched as Linda reached across the table and touched the man's arm, the same gesture Marcus had described. "Derek, she said you have been so helpful through all of this. I do not know what we would have done without you." Derek. The man had a name now. Derek, who touched my wife's arm too casually. Derek, who was helping her sell her parents' home and prepare to leave me. Emma leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with a satisfied smile. "Honestly, this is the best decision we have ever made. Dad has no idea what is coming. He still thinks we are here taking care of sick grandparents." They all laughed. They laughed at me. Harold and Doris chuckled along from their seats, apparently in on the entire scheme. They were not sick at all. The whole thing was a lie, a cover story, so my wife and daughter could plot against me while I worked 14-hour days to keep money flowing into accounts they were secretly draining. I backed away from the window, my legs unsteady beneath me. 28 years. Nearly 3 decades of marriage. A lifetime of sacrifice. And this was what it amounted to. My wife conspiring with my daughter and a stranger to steal everything I had built, all while laughing at how easy it was to fool me. I wanted to storm inside and confront them. I wanted to scream until my throat went raw. I wanted to overturn that coffee table and scatter their scheming papers across the floor. But I did none of those things. Instead, I walked back to my truck on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. I climbed inside, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. They never knew I was there. I do not remember much about the drive that followed. I know I ended up in a rest stop parking lot about 20 miles from Harold and Doris's house, because that is where I found myself when the sun started setting. My truck was parked crookedly across 2 spaces. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. The images from that window kept replaying in my mind. Linda's satisfied smile. Emma's casual dismissal of her own father. The laughter that had rippled through the room while they plotted my ruin. I had seen it all with my own eyes, heard it with my own ears, and yet some part of me kept insisting it could not be real. But it was real. Every word, every gesture, every cruel joke at my expense. My wife and daughter had been planning this for who knows how long, building an escape route out of our family, while I remained oblivious, sending money and love to people who saw me as nothing more than a source of income to exploit. When did this start? That question haunted me more than any other. Was it last year? 5 years ago? Had Linda been pretending for our entire marriage, waiting for the right moment to strike? I thought about all the times she had seemed distant, all the conversations that went nowhere, all the nights she turned away from me in bed. Were those signs I should have noticed? Warnings I was too blind or too hopeful to see. I sat in that parking lot until the sky turned black and the stars emerged. At some point I started crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears streaming down my face while I stared at nothing. I had not cried since my father's funeral 15 years ago. I thought I had forgotten how. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Garrett, what is going on? You sound terrible." I told him everything. The email about the property valuation, my decision to visit unannounced, what I had seen and heard through that living room window, the word divorce hanging in the air like a death sentence. By the time I finished, my voice was hoarse and my hands were trembling. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with barely contained fury. "Those miserable creatures. After everything you did for them. Everything you sacrificed." "I know," I said. "Believe me, I know." "What are you going to do?" I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the seat. "I do not know. Part of me wants to drive back there and burn the whole thing down, metaphorically speaking." "Do not do that," Marcus said quickly. "Do not give them the satisfaction. Right now they think you have no idea what is happening. That is your advantage. They are not expecting you to fight back." His words cut through the fog of pain clouding my mind. He was right. If I confronted them now in my current emotional state, I would probably say or do something I would regret. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to protect myself before they could carry out whatever plan they had been crafting. "I am not going home tonight," I told Marcus. "I cannot be in that house right now." "Understood. Where will you stay?" "There is a motel a few exits back. I will get a room there." "Good. Get some rest if you can. We will figure this out together. You are not alone in this, Garrett. Remember that." I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat in the darkness for another long while, letting his words sink in. You are not alone. It was strange how much that simple statement meant. After 28 years of feeling like I was carrying my family on my back, someone finally reminded me that I did not have to carry this burden by myself. The motel was exactly the kind of place you would expect to find off a rural highway. Flickering neon sign, peeling paint on the doors. A front desk clerk who looked like he had seen too many sad stories walk through his lobby. I paid cash for one night and took the key to room 12. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The bed sagged in the middle. The television only got 5 channels, all of them fuzzy. But none of that mattered. I was not here for comfort. I was here to think. I lay on that sagging bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling running through my options. I could confront Linda and Emma, demand explanations, force them to account for their betrayal. But what would that accomplish? They would lie. They would make excuses. They might even turn the tables and blame me for snooping. Linda was clever that way. She always knew how to twist a conversation, until I ended up apologizing for things I never did. No. Confrontation was not the answer. Not yet. I needed information. I needed evidence. I needed to understand the full scope of what they were planning before I made any moves. Otherwise, I would walk into a legal battle unprepared and outmaneuvered. Marcus had said my advantage was that they did not know I knew. He was right. As far as Linda and Emma were concerned, I was still the oblivious husband and father back home, faithfully working and waiting for their return. If I played along, I could gather the ammunition I needed to protect myself. The thought of pretending everything was normal made my stomach turn. But I had spent 30 years swallowing my pride for the sake of my family. I could swallow it a little longer for the sake of my survival. I called Marcus again around midnight. Neither of us could sleep. We talked until nearly 4 in the morning, strategizing, venting, sometimes just sitting in silence on opposite ends of the line. He told me about his own divorce 15 years ago, how his ex-wife had tried to take him for everything he had. He survived by staying calm and letting the lawyers handle the emotional stuff while he focused on facts. That was going to be my approach too. By the time dawn broke, I had the outline of a plan. I would go home. I would act normal. I would quietly investigate my own wife and daughter, gathering evidence of their deception. And when I had enough to protect myself legally and financially, I would strike first. They wanted a divorce, fine. But it was going to happen on my terms, not theirs. I returned home the next day with a sense of purpose that surprised me. The pain was still there, deep and constant, like a wound that refused to close. But above the pain sat something harder, colder, more determined. I had a mission now. I was going to uncover every detail of their scheme and build a case that would ensure I did not lose everything I had worked my entire life to build. The house felt different when I walked through the door. Not physically, of course. The furniture was the same. The pictures on the walls had not moved. But I saw it all through different eyes now. This was not my home anymore. It was a crime scene full of evidence waiting to be discovered. I started with the finances. Linda had always handled our household accounts, paying bills and managing our savings, while I focused on earning. I never questioned her about money because I trusted her completely. What a fool I had been. I logged into our joint checking account and began reviewing transactions going back several years. The picture that emerged was damning. Small transfers to an account I did not recognize happening every month like clockwork. They started about 5 years ago, just $50 here and there. Over time they grew. $100, $200, $500. By my rough calculation, Linda had siphoned off nearly $40,000 from our joint savings into this mystery account. I searched through every file on our home computer, looking for clues about where that money had gone. In a folder buried 3 levels deep within Linda's documents, I found what I was looking for. Bank statements for an account at a credit union across town, opened solely in her name. The balance showed just over $42,000. My money. Our money. Stolen in plain sight over 5 years while I trusted her with everything. But that was just the beginning. I found correspondence with the real estate company Henderson Realty. Multiple emails discussing the valuation of Harold and Doris's property and strategies for a quick sale. The man named Derek appeared frequently in these exchanges. His full name was Derek Henderson, and he was not just a realtor. According to his email signature, he was also a certified financial planner specializing in asset protection and divorce planning. The phrase divorce planning made my stomach lurch. This was not a recent development. Linda had been working with this man for months, possibly longer, laying the groundwork for leaving me while maximizing what she could take on her way out. I dug deeper and found something that hurt even more than the financial betrayal. A draft document titled Division of Assets. It was Linda's wish list for the divorce typed out in neat bullet points. House full ownership or sale with 70% of proceeds. Retirement accounts 50-50 split. Vehicles, she takes the newer sedan, I keep the older truck. Alimony requesting $1,500 per month for 5 years. She had thought of everything. Every asset we owned, every dollar I had saved, every piece of property I had worked decades to acquire. She had it all mapped out, ready to claim as much as possible. At the bottom of the document, there was a note that chilled me to my core. Witness to husband's neglect of family and emotional unavailability. Emma, my own daughter. She was going to testify against me in divorce proceedings. She was going to stand in a courtroom and tell a judge that I was a bad father, that I neglected my family, that Linda deserved to take everything because I was never there. The irony would have been laughable if it were not so devastating. I was never there because I was working. I was working to provide for them. Every hour I missed every school play, I could not attend every birthday party that started without me. It was all because I was earning the money that kept them fed and clothed and housed. And they were going to use my sacrifice against me. I saved copies of everything I found, screenshots of bank statements, emails between Linda and Derek, the asset division document with Emma's name on it. I transferred them to a flash drive that I hid in my truck, somewhere Linda would never think to look. Then I did something that required every ounce of willpower I possessed. I called Linda. "Hi, honey," I said when she answered, keeping my voice light and casual. "Just checking in. How are your parents doing?" "Oh, you know how it is," she replied, sighing dramatically. "Dad is having good days and bad days. Mom is holding up, but it is exhausting for all of us. We might need to stay another week or two." "Of course. Take all the time you need. I am managing fine here." We exchanged a few more pleasantries before she made an excuse to hang up. Someone was at the door, she claimed. Probably a neighbor bringing food. I set down the phone and sat in silence for a long time. The woman I had loved for nearly 3 decades, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, had just lied to me without hesitation. And I had smiled through the phone like everything was fine. This was going to be the hardest role I had ever played. But I would play it perfectly until the curtain fell. 3 days later, I drove back to Harold and Doris's town, but I did not go to their house. Instead, I visited Wayne Patterson, an elderly man who had lived next door to them for over 30 years. Wayne and I had always gotten along during family visits. He was a straight shooter who said what he thought and expected the same from others. I found him working in his garden, pulling weeds from around his tomato plants. He looked up when my truck pulled into his driveway, shading his eyes against the afternoon sun. "Garrett, that really you? Well, I will be darned. What brings you out this way?" I told him I was in the area for work and thought I would stop by. We made small talk for a few minutes about the weather and his garden before I steered the conversation toward Harold and Doris. "I heard Harold has been having some health problems," I said carefully. "Heart issues or something like that. How is he doing?" Wayne looked at me strangely. Heart problems, Harold, news to me. I saw him just yesterday morning walking around the block like he does every day. Looked fit as a fiddle to me. My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Really, Linda told me he was pretty bad off. That is why she and Emma came to help out. Wayne scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well, Linda and Emma are here, that is true enough. Been here a couple weeks now, but they have not been doing much caregiving from what I can see. Mostly they are in the house with some fellow in a fancy suit. I have seen him come and go 3 or 4 times. They have papers spread all over the place, always huddled together, talking business." "Business," I repeated. "What kind of business?" "No idea. None of my concern, really. But I did hear Harold say something about selling the house last week when we were both getting our mail. Asked him about it, and he got real quiet. Said it was complicated." I thanked Wayne for the information and told him not to mention my visit to anyone. He agreed without asking questions, probably sensing that something was wrong. Old men like Wayne had seen enough of life to know when not to pry. Driving away from his house, I felt the last of my doubts evaporate. There was no sick father. There was no caregiving. There was only my wife and daughter working with a stranger to steal from her own parents and abandon our marriage. And they thought I would never find out. They were wrong. The next step was finding a lawyer of my own. Someone good. Someone experienced in dealing with situations exactly like mine. I could not use anyone local because word travels fast in small communities, and I needed to maintain the appearance of normalcy until I was ready to act. I found Robert Callahan through a recommendation from Marcus. Robert was a divorce attorney in the city about 2 hours from home, known for representing men in high-conflict situations. He had a reputation for being thorough, aggressive, and expensive. But I was not looking to save money. I was looking to save my life. Our first meeting took place in his office on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Robert was in his early 60s with silver hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from decades of navigating human misery. He listened without interruption as I laid out everything I had discovered. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. First of all, he said, "I am sorry you are going through this. What your wife and daughter are doing is despicable. But from a legal standpoint, they have actually made several critical mistakes that work in your favor." He explained that Linda's secret account constituted dissipation of marital assets, a serious offense in divorce proceedings. Her conspiracy with Derek to sell her parents' property, while possibly legal if Harold and Doris consented, raised questions about undue influence if they were being pressured or misled. And Emma's agreement to serve as a witness against me could be undermined by demonstrating her financial stake in the divorce outcome. "You have been building a strong case without even realizing it," Robert said. "The evidence you have gathered, bank statements, emails, the asset division document, all of this will be powerful in court. But we need to move strategically. If you confront them now, they will destroy evidence and regroup. We need to catch them completely off guard." We spent the next 2 hours developing a plan. Robert would prepare divorce papers on my behalf, but we would not file them immediately. First, I would continue gathering evidence while maintaining the illusion that I suspected nothing. When the time was right, Robert would file a motion to freeze all joint accounts and request an emergency hearing to address the asset dissipation. Linda would walk into court expecting to control the narrative and find herself on the defensive instead. Before I left, Robert gave me one more piece of advice. Talk to Harold and Doris separately if you can. Find out what they actually know about this scheme. If they are being manipulated by their own daughter, they could become valuable allies. It was a good suggestion. Harold and Doris were not bad people. They had always been kind to me. I had trouble believing they would willingly participate in a plan to destroy their son-in-law. More likely, Linda had fed them some version of events that painted me as the villain. I decided to reach out to an unlikely source, Claire, Linda's younger sister. Claire lived in Colorado and had always been something of a black sheep in the family. She and Linda had a complicated relationship, filled with old resentments and sibling rivalries that I never fully understood. But Claire had always been friendly toward me, and I suspected she might have insights into what was really happening. I called her that evening. She was surprised to hear from me, but not unwelcoming. "Garrett, this is unexpected. Everything okay?" I kept my voice casual, just trying to figure some things out. "Have you talked to Linda lately?" Claire snorted. "Linda and I barely talk. You know how she is. Too busy being the perfect daughter to bother with her screw-up sister." I sensed an opening. What if I told you she might not be as perfect as everyone thinks? There was a long pause. Then Claire said slowly, "I am listening." I told her an abbreviated version of what I had discovered, leaving out some of the more damning details, but giving her enough to understand the situation. When I mentioned the plan to sell Harold and Doris's house, Claire's reaction surprised me. "I knew something was going on," she said angrily. "Mom called me a few weeks ago sounding confused. She said Linda was talking about selling the house to pay for medical bills, but neither of them has any serious health problems. I tried to ask more, but Mom got flustered and said she could not talk. I thought it was just Mom being Mom, but now this makes sense. Do you think Harold and Doris understand what Linda is really planning? Honestly, no, Mom and Dad have always trusted Linda completely. She is the golden child who can do no wrong. If she told them selling the house was necessary for some reason, they would believe her without question. That confirmed what I had suspected. Harold and Doris were pawns, not co-conspirators. Linda was manipulating her own parents to fund her escape from our marriage. Claire promised to do some digging on her end and keep me informed. She also promised not to alert Linda that I was asking questions. Whatever differences the sisters had, Claire was not going to let her parents be exploited. "Garrett," she said before hanging up, "I am sorry this is happening to you. For what it is worth, I always thought you were too good for my sister. Now I know I was right." 3 weeks after my discovery at the window, I drove back to Harold and Doris's house. This time I did not sneak around the side or peer through windows. I parked in the driveway, walked up to the front door, and knocked loudly. Linda answered. For a split second, her face cycled through shock, confusion, and fear before settling into a forced smile. "Garrett, what a surprise. We were not expecting you." I kept my expression pleasant, but my eyes cold. "I know. I wanted to see how Harold was doing with my own eyes. A man worries about his father-in-law." She hesitated just long enough for me to know she was calculating her options. Then she stepped aside. "Of course. Come in. Dad will be so happy to see you." The house looked different than it had through the window. Cleaner, more organized. The papers that had been scattered across the coffee table were nowhere to be seen. They had been expecting this possibility, apparently, and had hidden the evidence. Harold was in the living room, looking startled by my appearance. He rose from his chair slowly, though I noticed he moved without any apparent difficulty. "Garrett, good to see you, son. Linda told us you were too busy with work to visit." I shook his hand firmly. "Never too busy for family, Harold. How are you feeling? Linda said you were having heart problems." Harold glanced at Linda, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Well, you know how it is. Some days better than others." Doris emerged from the kitchen equally surprised. She embraced me warmly before taking a seat beside her husband. We made small talk for a few minutes, everyone tiptoeing around the obvious tension in the room. Emma was notably absent. I asked where she was. "She went to pick up some groceries," Linda said quickly. "Should be back soon." I nodded and let the silence stretch. Then I turned to Harold. "So tell me about this plan to sell the house. I heard you were thinking about moving." The color drained from Harold's face. Linda's smile tightened into something resembling a grimace. "I do not know what you mean," Harold said weakly. "Wayne mentioned it when I stopped by his place. Said you were talking about it last week. Big decision, selling a home you have lived in for 40 years. I would have thought Linda would mention something that significant." The room went quiet. Doris looked at Linda with confusion. "You told us Garrett knew about everything." Linda's mask finally cracked. Her eyes darted between me and her parents, searching for a way out. I let her squirm for a moment. Then I pulled a folder from my jacket pocket and laid it on the coffee table. "You should know," I said calmly, "that I am aware of everything. The emails with Derek Henderson, the property valuation, the secret bank account with $42,000 of our money, the divorce papers you have been preparing, Emma agreeing to testify against me." I spread the documents across the table, copies of emails, screenshots of bank transfers, the asset division document with Emma's name at the bottom. I found all of this on our home computer. You really should log out of your accounts when you are planning to betray your husband." Linda's composure shattered. "Garrett, wait. Let me explain. It is not what you think. Really. Because I think you have been lying to me for weeks, telling me your father was sick when he is perfectly healthy, telling me you were caregiving when you were actually meeting with a financial planner to maximize what you can take from me in a divorce, using our daughter as a weapon. Have I misunderstood something?" Harold was staring at the documents, his face ashen. Doris had started crying softly. Linda, Harold said quietly, "Is this true? You told us Garrett was controlling, that he refused to let you have your own money, that the divorce was his idea." Linda did not answer. The front door opened and Emma walked in carrying grocery bags. She stopped when she saw me, the bags slipping from her hands and spilling across the floor. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing my child's face. "I am here because your mother and grandfather deserve to know the truth. And so do you, apparently." "Did you know Linda told Harold and Doris that I was controlling, that the divorce was my idea?" Emma glanced at her mother, then back at me. "I do not know what you are talking about." I pointed to the documents on the table. "Your signature is on those papers, Emma. You agreed to testify that I neglected you and your mother, that I was never there for my family. Is that what you really believe, that the man who worked 60-hour weeks so you could go to college without debt was neglecting you?" Emma's jaw tightened. "You were never around. You missed everything important. I missed things because I was working to pay for the house you grew up in, the clothes you wore, the car you drove to school, the tuition I paid so you would not start your adult life drowning in loans. I sacrificed my time so you could have opportunities, and this is how you repay me." For the first time, I saw something flicker in Emma's eyes. Doubt, maybe, or shame. Linda, meanwhile, had regained some of her composure. She straightened her spine and fixed me with a defiant stare. "Fine. You know. So what? It does not change anything. I am still leaving you, Garrett. This marriage has been dead for years. You just refuse to see it." "Maybe so. But you are not leaving with everything I spent 30 years building. I met with a lawyer last week, Robert Callahan. Perhaps you have heard of him." The name hit her like a physical blow. I could see she recognized it. "He has already prepared a motion to freeze all joint accounts and address the dissipation of assets. That means your secret account with $42,000. When we go to court, the judge will see exactly what you have been doing. Hiding money, conspiring to sell your parents' property under false pretenses, using our daughter as a weapon." Linda's defiance wavered. "You would not. I would. And I will. Unless we come to an agreement that I find acceptable." The room fell silent. Harold and Doris sat frozen, finally understanding the full scope of their daughter's deception. Emma stood among the scattered groceries looking lost, and Linda, for perhaps the first time in our marriage, had no clever response. I gathered my documents and stood. "I will be in touch through my lawyer, but I want you all to understand something. I did not want this. I spent 28 years trying to build a family, trying to provide, trying to be a good husband and father. You are the ones who chose betrayal. Now you get to live with the consequences." I walked out without looking back. The months that followed were difficult, but not in the way I expected. The divorce proceeded largely according to plan. Robert was every bit as effective as his reputation suggested. When Linda's lawyer saw the evidence we had compiled, most of the fight went out of their case. The secret account was deemed marital property and divided equally. The house was sold, and I received 60% of the proceeds given Linda's financial misconduct. Her request for alimony was denied outright. Harold and Doris's house did not sell. Once they understood how Linda had manipulated them, they refused to proceed with the listing. Claire flew in from Colorado to help them sort out the situation, and in the process the two sisters had a reckoning that was long overdue. I do not know all the details, but I know Linda is no longer welcome at her parents' home. Emma reached out to me once about 3 months after the divorce was finalized. She wanted to talk, she said, to explain her side. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. She looked older than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing her clearly for the first time. She told me she was sorry, that her mother had filled her head with stories about me for years, painting me as cold, distant, uninterested in my own family. That she had grown up believing I chose work over her. That the divorce plan seemed like justice at the time. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I asked her one question. Do you remember when you were 9 years old and you wanted a telescope for your birthday? You had been talking about stars and planets for months. Your mother said it was too expensive, that you would lose interest in a week. But on your birthday morning, there it was set up on the back porch. Emma nodded slowly. I worked overtime for 3 months to pay for that telescope without dipping into our savings. I installed extra wiring for an observatory at the Henderson estate just to earn the bonus. Your mother never knew because I wanted it to be a surprise for both of you. That is who I am, Emma. That is who I have always been. Tears were streaming down her face. Dad, I did not know. No, you did not. Because you never asked. We sat in silence for a while. Eventually, I told her I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because carrying anger was too heavy a burden. I told her I hoped she would learn from this, would become a better person, would think twice before believing the worst about someone without evidence. I do not know if our relationship will ever recover. Some things once broken cannot be fully repaired. But I left that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. The hardest part of healing was learning to live for myself. For 30 years, every decision I made was filtered through the question of what my family needed. Now there was only me, and I had no idea what I wanted. I started small. I took up hobbies I had abandoned decades ago. I learned to play guitar, something I had dreamed about since I was a teenager. I traveled to places I had only seen in magazines. I volunteered at a vocational school teaching electrical work to young people who reminded me of myself at that age. Slowly, I built a new life. Not the life I had imagined, but a life that was authentically mine. Marcus was there through all of it, as he had been for 35 years. We spent more time together than ever before. Fishing trips, football games, long evenings on his back porch drinking beer and talking about nothing in particular. He introduced me to a widower support group, even though I was not technically a widower. The men there understood what it meant to lose a life you thought was permanent. I made new friends too. People who knew me only as Garrett, not as Linda's husband or Emma's father. People who valued me for who I was not, for what I could provide. One evening, about a year after the divorce was final, I stood on the balcony of a small apartment I was renting downtown. The sun was setting over the skyline, painting the clouds in shades of orange and gold. I realized I was smiling. Not because I had forgotten the pain. The betrayal still hurt, and I suspect it always will. But the pain no longer defined me. It was just one chapter in a much longer story. I thought about all the years I had spent sacrificing for people who did not appreciate my efforts. I thought about the silent meals, the cold shoulders, the gradual erosion of love that I had refused to acknowledge. And I realized that in losing my family, I had finally found myself. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this is simple but profound. You cannot make people love you by giving them everything. Love is not a transaction. It is not something you earn through sacrifice or purchase with hard work. Real love is freely given and freely received without conditions or expectations. For 28 years, I tried to buy my family's love with my labor. I thought if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, provided enough, they would have to love me in return. But love does not work that way. And chasing after people who do not truly want you is a race you can never win. Now I understand that my worth is not measured by what I can provide to others. My value as a human being exists independent of my usefulness. I deserve to be loved for who I am, not for what I can give. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you are trapped in a relationship where your sacrifices go unnoticed and your love goes unreturned, I want you to know something. You deserve better. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be appreciated. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who do not recognize your worth. I am not telling you to give up on your relationships. I am telling you to stop giving up on yourself. This morning I woke up to sunlight streaming through my window. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on my balcony listening to birds and watching the city come to life. For the first time in 28 years, I felt completely at peace. Not because my life is perfect. It is not. I still have lonely nights and difficult memories. I still wonder sometimes what might have been different. But I am free now. Free from the expectations that suffocated me. Free from the people who used me. Free to build a life based on what I want, not what others demand. That freedom is worth more than anything I lost. So wherever you are tonight, whatever struggles you are facing, remember this. Your story is not over. The people who hurt you do not get to write your ending. You do. And sometimes the endings we write for ourselves are better than anything we could have imagined. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed everything you thought you knew? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below because you never know who might need to hear it. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to know they are not alone. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about resilience, healing, and finding your way through the darkest times. Thank you for walking this journey with me today. May you find peace in your own story, and may you always remember that your worth is not measured by what you give, but by who you are. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.